Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, and this is my Friday Reads. I'm getting ready for March Mystery Madness, but this video is not about mysteries at all. It's about books that are new to me, that were wonderful for the most part, and I'm excited to tell you about. Sometimes it's not easy for me to make videos, and I'm lucky to live in Hawaii because we have a lot of light, even at 4:30 at night. So I hope that the lighting is going to be good for you. But let's get into the books, because for the most part, I have 4.5 and 5-star reads, except for the one. And I'm going to get into that now. And that book is a first author for me, Beryl Bainbridge, The Bottle Factory Outing. And I was recommended this book by a booktuber. I can't remember who it was that said that this was worth reading. So I'll say it didn't work for me, mainly because it's a black comedy. And we had a tag not too long ago about, yes or no. What kind of books do you like? And I was thinking, did I ever read a black comedy? And I wasn't sure if I did. But this is definitely a black comedy. So what is it about? It's about two roommates, Frida and Brenda. Frida is almost like a supernatural superwoman type of character. She's tall and blonde and forthright and really almost like a mythical figure of a superwoman. In my view. I thought of this later on. And then Brenda is almost her complete opposite. She's like brought up in this household where you don't show your feelings. No matter what happens, you don't make a scene. And Frida calls her, she has a victim mentality. And I think she does. Anyway, the beginning of this book was laugh aloud funny. It's about these two flatmates in London, and they work in a wine bottling factory with a bunch of immigrants from Italy. So what could go wrong, right? That part I liked. So they're getting ready, for the second part of the book where they go on an outing in the country. What can possibly go wrong, right? What I liked about this book was the laugh out loud comedy. Frida is in love with the owner's nephew, which it will never work out as a reader, but that Frida doesn't believe it's not going to work out, and that's how she's written. And Brenda gets herself into situations where one of the workers gets her into corners and tries to, excuse my language, but feel her up or more. But that part was hilarious. The second part, and I'm not going to go into why it didn't work for me because that would be spoiling the book. But basically, from the beginning that they're out on the outing, everything goes wrong. The cars didn't come. Not everybody can go. And the story goes on from there, and it was, for me, too dark a comedy for me to really enjoy it. So for the laughs, I gave it 3.5 stars, but that's all I'll say about it. But you might enjoy this if you like dark comedy, or if you like two opposite kind of people living together. A part of that was really hilarious. And there's one part where they're living in a bed sitting room basically, and Brenda puts like books in the middle so they don't touch each other, because she says that Frida has these wild dreams and is moving around in the book, in the bed, and it's really funny. And then there's another character in the book who's an Irishman who's in love with Brenda, and it gets too hilarious. The first half of the book worked for me, like I said. Talked enough about it. So if this sounds interesting to you, that's the Bottle Factory Outing. It got a very good reception. And I think I'm going to read the first book. I might read the first book that this author wrote that might be more autobiographical, but it might be funny. And they say that she writes about like London, middle class London, very well, and that she's one of the best British writers. So listen, it might work for you. So anyway, that's this book. So what did I read next? Okay, I don't have the book with me, but I ordered it from the library. I read it and I took it back and I ordered it again so my daughter can read it, and it'll be here. And it is The Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa, translated by Eric Ozawa. First, I want to tell you something about this book that I noticed from reading reviews from other people about it. And that was the writing was simplistic. It's about, it's not realistic. It's a romance. It's not that much about books, even though it takes place in a bookstore. Those were things that I read about it. And then when I read the first part of the book, I said, this really happened to a person I know. So how unrealistic can it be? Okay, so basically what happened is Takako, who's the heroine of our story, works in Tokyo, and she thinks she's having a serious relationship with this really horrible guy who is not really nice to her, but she's sort of like she thinks they have an understanding, as they used to say in the olden days. And it turns out that he tells her very offhandedly that he's going to marry someone, that he's getting married to someone who works with them. Now, this is what happened to somebody, a Japanese student who I used to work in a house called the Fernhurst YWCA. And I don't know if I told you this. I was the manager of the resource center where we help people for different reasons. And on the third floor were the snowbirds and the Japanese students, and they used to come down because I used to help them with their homework. They used to be, whatever. I made friends with a person, and she ended up marrying a relative of mine. But she told me this story that when she was in Japan, she thought she was going to marry this coworker, and he got engaged to another person in their company, just like Takako, and she had to leave. She couldn't stay there because it was such a shameful thing. So if anybody says this is not a true story, that this couldn't happen, this did happen, and I remember it because that's why this person I knew came to Hawaii, to get away from Japan and everything that happened. So that's the main premise of Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, except that instead of going to another country, she went to live with her uncle, who she didn't know very well, and his name was Saturo, and she really didn't know him since she was more or less a child. She knew that he had a bookstore in a very famous place in Tokyo, which I haven't been to. And it's a part of Tokyo that has many secondhand bookstores, and that really exists in Tokyo. So that was very interesting too, because she really the author really describes through Takako that environment of used bookstores. And that was very interesting and very educational as well. Now, Another thing I want to say is that they said it was simplistic writing, which it is, and you might think, and it's possible that the translator, there's so many different words for things in Japan. And now I told you that I worked in Japan as a English language teacher for 3 years. So though it might come out as very simplistic, it has deep meaning in Japanese language that might not have been able to be translated with the same words that would make you think, oh, this is really complicated. And the Japanese language is very complicated. So I was able to read through the lines and realize that when something was happening, it was more than what it was happening. And if you can read it like that, I think you'll enjoy the story more. But anyway, so what is it about? So Takako doesn't like reading. She reads some manga, and she's young, and she's self-involved. And when she finds out that she's dumped by this guy, she goes into a deep depression, and she finds out that the family has been working and trying to get her to have a new environment, to live at this Morisaki bookshop. And in the beginning, she's in a depression, and she's sleeping in the bookshop with all the books, and she's sleeping most of the time, but she's helping her uncle also. And as she gets out of the depression and starts really enjoying her life at the shop and the people that she's meeting, you see her blossoming and learning more about herself. And you have to really, like I said, read between the lines. So the area of this bookshop place is called Jimbosho. So I didn't really know this place, but definitely if I ever go back to Japan, I'm going to read it. So she starts her healing through books and through people that she's meeting in this bookshop, people who love books. So if you like stories with bookshops, I think you'll like this, even though a lot of people said, well, it's not really about the books. But it is, because she talks about books that maybe were not translated into English, but books that, and some were, that have a lot of meaning to the bookshop owner, as well as through Japanese culture. So if you understand that, even if you don't read the book, you'll get a good idea of how interesting the story is. The second half of the book didn't work as well for some people, because it deals more with Satoru and his wife Momoko. And she had left him, and she comes back into the picture, and we learn why. And I that worked for me, because it really showed you another facet into Japanese culture. So I really enjoyed that. I loved the characters, except her boyfriend, of course. And so people say it's a gentle book and it's enjoyable. I think it's gentle on the surface, but if you dig deeper, you can see you will learn about Japanese culture and how Japanese women in particular are treated and deal with a lot of things that they're not allowed to be very vocal about. And there's a lot of machismo in Japan still yet, and this is a modern woman. So if you enjoy any of this, you will love Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. And I'm definitely going to read it again, and I want to see what my daughter, who lived there in Japan 7 years, what she thinks of it. And I'll come back to you with her ideas, because I want to see what somebody who lived and speaks Japanese much better than I do, speaks almost fluent Japanese, would think about the book, if it is simple or if it's deeper. But I'm thinking it's deeper. And I gave this book 4.5 stars, and the other 2 books I'm going to talk about are 5-star reads. And This is a book, a Canadian woman fiction, Margaret Lawrence, and I read A Jest of God with Lindy at Lindy's Magpie Reads, and we loved it. And I told her that she would love this book, and I loved this book. This is 8 interconnected stories of a young woman who's, it's a coming of age story, but it's so much more than that. And I want to give you an idea of the writing from the first page of how beautiful the writing is. So they're talking about a house in Manawaka. And this is a semi-autobiographical book because Margaret Lawrence was brought up in the prairie near Winnipeg, and she names the town that she lived Manawaka, but it wasn't called Manawaka. So she's talking about this house. The house in Manawaka is one which more than any other I carry with me. So you know that this story is going to be a lot about this one particular house in Manawaka. And this is the part I wanted to read you. By the mid-30s, the spruces were taller than the house, and 2 generations of children had clutched at boughs which were as rough and hornily knuckled as the hands of old farmers, and had swung themselves up to secret sanctuaries. So you're going to have a lot of setting in this book, but you're going to have a lot of character study and coming of age. It's just a perfect book. The interconnected stories part did not bother me, mainly because it felt like a full novel to me. Yeah, sometimes we go back and forth into time a little bit, but basically it's about these people. Her father is a sort of a failed doctor, and her mother, they're living very poor in the 30s, but they're eating. I mean, this is during the Depression, so it could be worse. And the aunt, who's a delightful character, had lost her job in Winnipeg when the Depression came, and she's living with the father. The father is a really interesting character. I don't want to spoil it for you, but he's very hard to like, but yet we see the whole family, how he controls his family, and how this young girl is brought up and not liking her grandfather, to say the least. She loves her grandmother, his wife, but she doesn't like the way he's treating her. She doesn't like the way he's treating her father. She doesn't like the way he's treating the aunt. Basically, you know, she feels he's not a nice person. And I'll let you decide if you read this book. And this is a 5-star read for me. I want to read everything that Margaret Lawrence wrote. I want to read it twice. So did I say enough? 5 stars. And the last book that I read is one I picked up. The funny part is I read a lot of these books, not on Kindle, but because I read them sort of in old copies at the library. And this one was a library sale book that I picked up. Now, do you know who David Mamet is? I watched a movie a long time ago called Glengarry Glen Ross. It says it won the Pulitzer Prize. And he also wrote Speed the Plow, which I don't really know what it's about. But I don't even remember the premise of Glengarry Glen Ross. I remember the words. In fact, his words are called Mamet's speech. So when you read this, it says here, Mamet's clenched fist to the gut and intellect, a vicious and timely riff on sexual harassment and political correctness. Pinter, Albie, Miller, they're all looking over Mamet's shoulder. Actually, Harold Pinter directed the London premiere of this book. I made a short about it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it's a great cover with the woman in the background and the teacher who's all harassed standing. And William Macy, by the way, played the first in the play, and I can imagine he was good. And they said that the girl, so it's what is it about? A professor and a student in sort of an inquisition, let's put it that way. The words are wonderful. I can't say enough about it, except that it's just as relevant now, if not more, than it was in 1992. It had two endings, and I'm not going to spoil either one of the ending for you, but I think that the original ending that was taken out, this was the ending that Mamet said to Pinter, I'm not taking this out in the English audience. I think that was a better ending, but they decided when they went to America to take that out. And I don't know the whole story about it, but that's fascinating. Anyway, I love this book. It's I couldn't stop reading it until I finished it. And it's a very short play. I should have said it's a play. I love plays. And I think people who like Shakespeare might enjoy this. It has a King Lear type of tragedy in it, in a way. It has so much in such a small amount of book that I really I want to read it again, actually, because it's nuanced. It's so nuanced, and the words are just stand out. So you're just shocked, and I love that. I love plays that do that, and I used to watch a lot of plays in New York. Whenever I had extra money, I would just wait online, get a half-price ticket, and go to a play. And I wish I could have done that, but unfortunately, I was in Hawaii in 1992. The fact that this book was written in 1992, and I think it didn't come out in 1994, and it also is a film that I think was said not to be as successful. So maybe it didn't translate enough in film, and that happens a lot. So those are the 4 books that I read this month, and I had a delightful time reading these books. They were so diverse. I mean, I have translated fiction, I have mid-century English writing, Liverpoolian, where Beryl Bainbridge is supposed to be from Liverpool and writes about that type of population at that time in the 60s and 70s. And this does have a big early 70s vibe to it. So that was one thing I liked about it. So let me know in the comments, have you read any of these books? Did my telling you about it make you want to read any of these books? And I'm so glad that you joined me. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and push the notification bell so you can find out when I do my blabbering about books, because I can't tell you how much that being on Booktube means to me. And I don't want to say again at my age, but it's true. Sometimes when you get older, your life gets smaller. And I never liked a small life. I always wanted a big life. And I made that happen no matter what. So I think I'm making it happen. Not on Booktube. I'm not watched a lot on Booktube, but it's making me feel that I can talk to someone about books. Years ago I was considered weird for liking books, and now I'm on a platform where people talk about books and people listen. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, until my next video, I'm going to do some more. I'm reading a lot of still about for Black History Month, and getting ready to do a lot of March Mystery Madness this year. So until my next video, I wish you all good health, happiness, and of course, from Hawaii, a lot of aloha.